Videos like these are made possible by viewers like you, who support the channel through Patreon, channel memberships, and stream donations. And don't forget to check out the Bad Weapon Rehabilitation servers at www.badweaponrehab.tf. Check the links in the description for more information, and let's get into the video.
Hey everyone, so since I've completed the Bad Weapon Academy series for Doom Eternal, I thought I'd go ahead and rank every single weapon and weapon mod in the game, and give my perspective on how good or bad I think they are as a reasonably experienced Doom Eternal player. To clarify a few things, I won't be ranking anything from the equipment launcher, since I think all of those are good for their own reasons and don't really need any kind of ranking. Same goes for the blood punch, the chainsaw, and I guess the dash if you want to count that since it technically does damage. I'll also be ranking each weapon's base fire and both of its mods separately, since they pretty much always have completely different functions that you can't really use simultaneously. If it doesn't have mods, then I'll just be judging the weapon as a whole. So let's get started with the first weapon you get, the combat shotgun. The base fire of this weapon is pretty terrible. It's slow, short range, and overall not very practical. You're basically never going to be using this outside of the first room in the entire game before you get a weapon mod, unless maybe you want to get a fodder demon into glory kill range, which is annoyingly inconsistent since you might one-shot the demon outright or barely even scratch them, or if you run out of sticky bombs and need to reload. But that's basically only going to be in like those first 3 arenas before you get the heavy cannon and upgrade that. It looks even worse next to full auto since that's basically just a better version of the base fire, so you can't even use them interchangeably. All of this and the lack of combo potential puts the base fire of the combat shotgun in an unsurprising D tier. Now for basically just the better base fire, the full auto shotgun. Basically identical to the base fire in every way, except now it doesn't shoot slowly, and in fact has a very high rate of fire. This mod was the first one I covered for the Doom Eternal Bad Weapon Academy series, so you know it's not going to go very high. That being said, I really do enjoy using it. It's not all that good at getting kills on higher health enemies, but it's very satisfying to get kills with. I won't repeat myself too much from that video, but the long and short of it is that full auto at the start is immediately outclassed by sticky bombs, and later outclassed by the super shotgun. So the opportunity cost of using it over the other options that use the same type of ammo is pretty high outside of the situations that it was designed around this mod's existence, which is during encounters with stone imps. Even by the time you get it upgraded with the ammo salvo, it almost feels like too little too late. It's a long time to stick with the weapon to get an admittedly good upside out of it, but by that time, your super shotgun is more likely to be fully mastered anyway. It does have its uses as a finisher, and in combat scenarios involving quad damage power-ups, which are especially common in horde mode. So I'm going to be putting it into C tier. It's not amazing, but it's far from useless, and still a lot of fun if you get into the right groove with it. Meanwhile, the sticky bombs are very likely going to be the weapon mod you'll be obtaining first, and they do a lot for you in the early game. One-shotting fodder demons, dealing blast damage in a radius, dealing extra damage upon headshots, destroying weak points like Arachnotron turrets, and being able to stagger Kako demons are all very useful, on top of being able to be used in quick switch combos, with an early one being sticky bombs and the precision bolt. However, it ends up falling off in its usefulness as the game goes on. You get better explosive options with rockets and upgraded grenades, and the precision bolt can easily take out weak points, and a lot faster and without having to deal with the arc of the sticky bomb, which can be especially useful for enemies like Bloodmakers when they become vulnerable. However, I still find sticky bombs extremely useful for dealing with turrets in the DLC, since 2 sticky bombs will take them out without the need for any quick switching. And it's still nice to have them as an easily disposable option for taking out weak points without needing to have precision bolts equipped if you want to use micro missiles and don't want to waste ballista ammo. Something that's especially useful in the DLCs, as you might want to keep as much plasma ammo on you as possible for spirits. That comboed with the fact that micro missiles can be a good means of taking down possessed demons in the first place. And of course, if I need a glory kill for some health or a blood punch, then it's nice to be able to stagger a Kako demon without too much thought or effort. So good overall, and an early game hard carry, but ultimately outclassed the later you get in the game. I think it's pretty comfortable in B tier. Next is the heavy cannon. and god, the base fire is not very good. I think Doom Eternal improved on a lot from 2016, but god damn, the base fire between the two versions of this gun are like night and day. 2016's heavy assault rifle was a much worse weapon that got outclassed very quickly even with its weapon mods, but it fired off rounds so much faster and the sound effect was much more punchy and satisfying. Doom Eternal's heavy cannon's base fire is slow, awkward, and I don't know what the hell is going on with the sound effects for it. It just sounds so wimpy, like it's shooting out little puffs of air against the enemies. The damage actually isn't horrible against fodder enemies. You usually bring them into a glory kill state with a couple of shots, especially to the head, which is acceptable for a weapon you find in the first level, but it still feels pretty slow, even compared to the shotgun's time to kill, and against anything tougher than an amp or a soldier, you're better off using the shotgun's base fire, making it pretty much only good for setting up glory kills on already weak enemies for when you need one. It's kind of weird to rank this one though, because its biggest use case comes from one of its weapon mods, but even with that considered, I'm putting it at the bottom of D tier for the sound design alone. I hope that Skull Crusher weapon in Dark Ages is better than this. That upgrade that benefits from the base fire is micro missiles, and I consider these to be a fairly underrated weapon mod. But I can understand why that's the case given its competition. However, these missiles have a lot going for them. Auto-locking onto enemies, having a small explosion radius, and dealing fair damage all across the board, especially to bosses who have a built-in resistance to other, normally stronger weapons. It feels like a more satisfying version of the base fire for when you need to let off some rapid-fire rounds. Yeah, an automatic weapon in Doom Eternal that doesn't suck ass, who would have guessed. It does feel a bit limited in the early game with the reload time between volleys, but it only gets better with upgrades and mastery. Having a bottomless pool of missiles is great, and my favorite aspect of the mod is one I've only started making use of recently, the ability to boost the damage of missiles by killing an enemy with the heavy cannon's base fire. This upgrade kinda fucks. The base damage is still not very good at all, but if you meat hook onto a low health fodder demon like an imp or a zombie, and pepper it down with the base fire while it's stunned, you can get a massive boost in damage that will honestly rip through even some of the tougher enemies. I found it to be incredibly useful against possessed demons especially, since it gives you a bit of aiming wiggle room thanks to the auto tracking of the missiles, while still doing high damage and keeping you on the move. You can even use this against marauders thanks to the explosion radius. Just shoot the missiles at their feet, and you don't even have to cycle them to begin with. They may feel a bit outclassed by the competition, but I think they're situationally viable enough to hold their own and still find their uses. I'll put them in B tier right above Sticky Bombs. It's a mod I've really found myself enjoying lately. But the real star of the show here is the Precision Bolt, the bread and butter of just about any set of combos. Even if you don't count the combo potential, in the early game, this mod will one-shot any fodder demon outside of mecha zombies, who will be put into a glory kill state unless you headshot them, which will kill them instantly. So roughly the same damage as Sticky Bombs for less time and commitment, but in exchange for less crowd control until you get the mastery. At which point you go from being able to line up the occasional collateral to being able to turn an entire crowd of fodder demons into goo with a single headshot. It also lets you engage in combat and deal high damage from long range, where demons typically can't, which is generally speaking very useful. But at high levels of play, it's all about quick switch combos, and the Precision Bolt is king here. And being one of the best tools in the game for this job, with its nearly instant fire, high damage output, and its comparatively low ammo consumption. For just how strong and versatile it is, this is going to be our first S tier weapon. From one automatic weapon to another, we get the Plasma Rifle. The base fire is far more satisfying than that of the heavy cannon, firing much faster and dealing decent damage. Doom Eternal as a game is generally designed around its high burst damage, but the Plasma Rifle does a decent job at clearing out fodder enemies and even racking up damage on heavies, though not really enough to falter them, which can lead to you getting overwhelmed if you don't stay mobile, which can also make aiming the gun and its non-hit scan projectiles more difficult. One of the biggest use cases for the base fire comes in the form of being able to burst the energy shields of shotgunners and carcasses, creating satisfying explosions that can kill the enemy and anyone else in the vicinity. You can also use it to destroy Doom Hunter shields, but honestly I've never gotten much use out of this, and find that attacking the sled works just fine without any need to waste ammo pumping plasma into their extremely mobile faces. The damage obviously gets outclassed as the game goes by, but for the base fire of an automatic weapon, it's surprisingly solid. I'll put it in C tier above full auto. It's longer lasting and more consistent than full auto while being weaker overall shot for shot, but it's still very viable. Where things get even more fun is with the Heat Blast. Combining the decent base fire with intermittent bursts of radial damage, which deal more damage the longer you fire it. I feel like this is another underrated mod. Maybe just because it doesn't really conform super heavily to the more traditional high-level Doom Eternal playstyle, but in general, I think this is a pretty great mod. The Heat Blast, even at its weakest level, will deal solid damage in a wide radius and will instantly burst energy shields. You combine this with a Flame Belch or an Ice Bomb or both on a crowd of fodders, and it's just a thing of frame-dropping beauty. But the real beauty of the Heat Blast comes from its ability to briefly falter enemies anytime it's used. And considering you can start firing the Plasma Rifle right after you blast, you can pump damage into a demon you've just faltered, and by the time he's recovered, you just go again, stun him again, repeat. This even works against super heavies like Tyrants. You can just stun lock them to death. It's awesome. And the mastery makes this process even better, since using a fully charged Heat Blast will increase the damage output of your base fire for a few seconds. It's not a massive increase in damage, but it's well appreciated, especially since it leads into a positive feedback loop of shoot gun, blast heat, shoot more gun, charge up more Heat Blast. I know that a lot of higher level players will see it as maybe a bit of a waste of time compared to using basic combos, but it's still a lot of fun and something that even the more casual players can get behind. And for all these reasons, I'm putting it up into A tier. I think it's a really good mod. What I don't consider a good mod is the Microwave Beam. I had such high hopes for this one when I first played the game. I know I mentioned which weapon I considered potentially the worst in my most recent Doom Eternal video, but besides the crappy base fires, this one is still probably my least favorite to use. The main thing going against the Microwave Beam is the enforced speed debuff whenever it's active. For a game that always encourages you to never stop moving, you don't really have a choice in the matter with this mod when the meme beam itself doesn't feel powerful enough to justify getting rid of one of your biggest advantages. It's not like the mod doesn't have its upsides, obviously. Being able to see demon health is extremely practical for bulkier ones, especially when you want to use the beam itself to set up a big concussive blast, which are pretty easy to do with Cybermancubi after a falter into Blood Punch combo, since once you do that, their health is low enough for you to get a very big blast out of them very quickly. And you can use the beam on the Marauder's dog to create a concussive blast and sneak in a ballista shot against him, even though you could also just use Heat Blast in a combo for way more damage way more consistently. And of course it's useful against spirits and even the possessed demons themselves, thanks to its ability to stun an enemy in place as long as the beam is on them. But the incredibly high rate of ammo consumption, the slowdown, and the slow speed at which you even kill demons to begin with really makes this an unsatisfying and supremely situational mod to use. Its utility against spirits is the main thing keeping it in C tier, otherwise I'd be tempted to go into D, even with the stunning potential. Now here's a base fire. The rocket launcher. This weapon deals fantastic damage on directs and a respectable amount with splash damage. Good for both groups of enemies or focus firing a single tougher one. Good for firing intermittently or by using it in combos. It's just one of the game's best all-around weapons. There are some pretty major downsides in the fact that using it at close range can be pretty dangerous. The slow speed of the rocket can make hitting more mobile or distant enemies much more difficult, and the low ammo pool means you're going to want to save it for when you need it. So using it against a group of fodders or a single heavy or super heavy demon is probably going to be better than killing a single imp with it. But a weapon being so good that you need to save it for special occasions isn't exactly a bad thing, as we'll see later on down the list. And I can't imagine ranking the rocket launcher's base fire any lower than A tier, right above Heat Blast. But if you want to talk about real power, there's lock-on rockets. This is an easy contender for the strongest weapon mod in the game, but the competition it faces is stiff. A single 3-rocket burst with this mod is enough to kill or stagger almost every single heavy demon in the game. Pain Elementals and the Mancubi are about the only ones who don't fold like a sack of bananas to this absurd mod. And against super heavies, it's still one of the best ways to rapidly and efficiently pump damage to them while staying on the move. And that even includes possessed super heavies. And for the mobile enemies that are hard to hit like the ever annoying whiplashes, you can just let the mod do the aiming for you and trivialize encounters with these enemies. This gets rid of one of the biggest weaknesses of the base fire being the slow speed, making it hard to hit enemies at long ranges, but amplifies another weakness, the ammo consumption. 13 max rockets is not a lot, and that's only 4 volleys of lock-on rockets. But consider this, that's still 4 entire volleys of lock-on rockets. That is ass loads of damage. And even with that concession, this is unquestionably an S tier weapon mod, above even the Precision Bolt. And to bring it down a bit, we have Remote Detonation. Now, this mod was busted as shit in Doom 2016. You basically got to double up damage with every rocket you fired, and you applied DOT to anyone hit by the detonation blast, which constantly stunned demons and left them easy to glory kill. Doom Eternal scaled things back kind of a lot. Now the focus is less on damage and more on crowd control, in both senses of the term. In fact, the detonations of this mod do surprisingly little damage. However, there are still quite a few upsides to this. The main one being on-demand falters. Now it's not quite as spammable as the Heat Blast, or at least not as easily spammable. It's more like a stunning combo tool. Hit him with a blood punch, hit him with this. Hit him with a grenade, hit him with this, so on and so forth. And it's a mod that gives you a lot of breathing room when you're getting rushed down by a Baron, or need to interrupt an attack from a Tyrant or an Archvile that's about to ruin your day. You can also use it to get rid of Lost Souls around Pain Elementals, deal damage to shielded enemies including Chain Gunners and Shotgunners, and just generally being able to make up for inaccuracies from firing base rockets, while still being able to do significant damage because, hey, at the end of the day, it's still a rocket launcher. This is honestly a mod that I was considering for Bad Weapon Academy, but I think it's got enough going for it that I don't feel too bad about putting it into the low end of B tier. Not quite as satisfying as micro missiles or early game sticky bombs, but still very practical. And of course, right after that, you have the Super Shotgun. This weapon is crucial to your gameplay, and it's not just because it deals absolutely insane damage that can put demons as tough as Revenants into an instant glory kill if you're close enough to them. It's not just because it's useful as a combo tool and being one of the best ways to take out Marauders, and it's not because the spread is extremely forgiving while still dealing respectable damage even at mid-range. It's all because of the meat hook. You can just fly wherever the fuck you want with this thing. It's incredible. A lot of players I see play Doom Eternal for the first time won't really use the meat hook all that often, myself included during my first playthrough. Then they'll see the advantages of being able to close the gap on an enemy with a very powerful close range gun, on top of being able to recover armor from them with the mastery, and then they figure out how to swing around like Tarzan, and it's like the entire game just pops open like a can of soda. Everything about the entire game is enhanced with the meat hook. Combat encounters, exploration, platforming, dodging enemy fire, closing the gap on enemies, gaining space, gaining height, gaining speed. It's amazing. And on top of all of this, it's just a fantastic weapon to use. Even with the reduced ammo count and the lack of a double tap from Doom 2016, it's still easily one of the most powerful weapons in the game. So many enemies just get one tap by this thing, and that makes recovering armor from them incredibly easy, which further enhances the gun's utility for survivability. I understand that Doom the Dark Ages is going to be going for something totally different, so there's no meat hook, and I get that. But when that game comes out, I'm seriously gonna miss it. I hope it's in like the last level of the game, or used against the final boss or something as a little bonus. The meat hook had to get on the weapon somehow. But I think it's extremely fitting that the Super Shotgun will be the first weapon in the SS tier. There's no weapon that deserves this slot more, except for the other weapons that are gonna go in this tier. From one amazing weapon to another is the Ballista. The jelly to the Super Shotgun's peanut butter. It's one half of a very easy and practical quick switching combo that racks up massive damage on just about anything you point it towards. And more than just being one of the best combo tools in the game, the base fire of the Ballista is very practical. It's basically just a stronger on-demand precision bolt, dealing incredible damage on single targets and being able to easily destroy enemy weak points. With the main downsides being the fact that each shot fired takes 25 plasma ammo, it doesn't deal as much damage to possessed demons, and the precision required to use it at long ranges. But even then, the fact that you can use it at long range at all is a bonus. And if being a high damaging long range combo weapon wasn't enough, it also shares a trait with its companion, the Super Shotgun, being a mobility tool on top of that. Retaining the same properties as the Gauss Cannon from 2016, the pushback you get upon firing it will launch you backwards, and when used with proper momentum, like for instance from a meat hook swing, you can fire behind yourself to further increase your speed and fling yourself across damn near any map in the game. No question, this is an S tier base fire, and with its sheer utility in combos, weak point destruction, and mobility, I'm putting it at the top of S tier, even above lock-on rockets. The Arbalest, meanwhile, is a bit more situational. but those situations do still end up being very appreciated. For one thing, it basically works as a stronger ballista shot with an explosion and a zoom, making it easier to use at long range and against crowds. Just one that ends up being a lot slower to fire due to the charge up timer. This makes it very useful against marauders and is one of the most common weapons used for starting marauder 1 cycles. The splash damage from the explosion is also quite practical, especially against groups of flying enemies, which the Arbalest deals extra damage to. A lot of master levels like Super Gore Nest or Mars Core will throw lots of Kako Demons or Pain Elementals at you all at once, and this mod is perfect for those situations since the bolt itself will instantly kill any Kako Demon it comes in contact with, and the explosion will put any that are close by into an immediate stagger state. Ultimately, I still end up using the base fire a lot more, but this is still a powerful and useful mod. I'll put it into the bottom of A tier, below Heat Blast. However, the mod I'll end up equipping far more often is the Destroyer Blade. I feel like this is a mod that gets better the more you know about Doom Eternal. If you're just starting out and playing casually, then the Arbalest is probably going to be better for you. But knowing when and where certain enemies spawn makes this weapon much more viable in certain situations, on top of dealing just insane damage to anything it hits. In addition, unlike the Microwave Beam slowdown, the Destroyer Blade slowdown can be circumvented entirely through B-hopping. It can work as a great initiator to a fight that you know is about to begin. And the incremental blade mastery is great for not only less committal strikes that don't take or need as much time or ammo, but also for dealing with carcasses in particular, who instantly die to a single tick of the blade and have their shields penetrated by it. The biggest downsides come from the ammo consumption, especially compared to the Arbalest, which doesn't take any extra ammo at all, the slow charge up rate, and the environment itself, which may not exactly play nicely with the blade's intended path towards your enemies. But despite all of its drawbacks, I don't think I can rank anything that instantly one-shots Spectre Whiplashes anywhere below A tier. I'd be tempted to put it higher, but I think how beginner unfriendly the mod is holds it back a little bit. Next up is the Chain Gun. And the base fire is about what you'd expect from a minigun. Basically just a stronger version of the heavy cannons with more and faster bullets so it actually deals damage. And you know what? I have the same complaint about the sound design. It was better in 2016. Especially on the mobile turret, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The base fire of the chain gun feels fine, I guess? I don't know, I feel like I basically never use the base fire unless I'm pairing it with the energy shield. Like, the first thing you fight with a chain gun is a Dread Knight, and I feel like it does okay against it, but it's not exactly a great demonstration of the weapon's power when that's something they really like doing with the BFG to great effect in both games, not to mention the Crucible, and hell, even the modded combat shotgun in the first real arena gets a taste of this. Top of C tier because it's stronger than the plasma rifle, but it's nothing special. I don't really have anything else to say about this one. Speaking of not having much to say, the mobile turret. It's kind of like full auto in that it's just the base fire but stronger and it eats through your ammo faster. This at least feels decently powerful, and I'd say it's a beginner friendly mod. It's not super flashy, there's no cool combos, but hey, if you just want to hold down the button and send some Hell Knights slamming into the wall at Mach 5, then this is the gun for you, go have a blast. In practice though, I honestly find this weapon to be a downgrade to micro missiles in most situations, with its slower deploy speed, lack of explosions or lock-on, and also with many bosses having a passive resistance to mobile turret when they don't for micro missiles. And considering the fact that they're two fully automatic weapons that use the same ammo type, I kind of have to side with the one that I find more situationally viable. It's honestly kind of hard to find an area that the mobile turret isn't outclassed in. This one's a C tier weapon, but at the top of C tier, above its base fire counterpart. It's a totally viable option, but one that's pretty much never going to feel like the best one to use. Speaking of the best one to use, I'm going to say that the Chain Gun's energy shield is the strongest weapon mod in the entire game, even more so than lock-on rockets. Lock-on rockets will deal massive damage to a single target, often killing them outright. Energy shield will invalidate all damage from every single demon around you, with a handful of exceptions, on top of being a weapon in its own right, with the shield bash dash that can instantly kill fodder demons and falter heavy ones, and shoot out a projectile once the shield vanishes that deals additional damage in a massive range, on top of being able to do all of this while firing with the base chain gun and racking up damage on whatever target is the most threatening. This weapon mod is so busted as to actually be kind of lame to use. This mod makes me feel sorry for the demons I fight. Hell, the base fire of the chain gun even works to the mod's benefit as a disengage tool, because you can pop the shield, fire off a few shots at a weak enemy, and get a free glory kill for health without any kind of risk involved on your part. Or you could just shield bash and get basically the same DPS as the mobile turret without the concerns of your single target focus making you vulnerable due to tunnel vision, since your shield is absorbing everything anyway. This is unquestionably an SS tier mod, but I'm perhaps controversially placing it below the super shotgun, since I feel like meat hooking is such a core facet of any high level Doom Eternal player's arsenal, while the energy shield is pretty much just a means of not engaging with the combat at all while it's active. And now we finally move on to the final batch of weapons. The super weapons. And I think it's pretty safe to say that the game starts you off with the best one. The BFG is easily the strongest weapon in the game, and that's no accident. The devs wouldn't have given you so little ammo to work with if they didn't want this thing to be an absolute room clearer. But its weakness against bosses, spirits, and super heavies keep it decently in check, even if the damage against those is pretty monstrous. This is a weapon that works out fantastically as a panic button for anyone still learning the game and in need of a get out of jail free card with an actual serious cost. And even at the highest levels of play, this weapon still sees a lot of use due to its unbridled utility in speedrunning, being able to clear out entire enemy encounters with a single well-placed and well-timed shot. The slow-moving ball and insta-kill tendrils ensure that any large and open arena is just a farm for kills with this weapon instead of an actual challenge. No other weapon in the game can even come close to that level of sheer power and destruction, and so it takes its rightful spot at the very top of SS tier. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that nothing's really going to take its place, but one weapon will come surprisingly close. That weapon is not, by the way, the Crucible. I think that this weapon has always disappointed me a little bit, seeing it at the end of Doom 2016 as this badass demon sword, and then getting to use it in this game. It's like, oh man, is there going to be like a whole melee combat system? No, it's just an insta-kill. But on the bright side, it's an insta-kill on any demon in the game outside of the bosses or a Marauder, or some of the DLC enemies, but you don't get to use the Crucible in the DLC anyway, so that's fine. I think that the Crucible is a well-balanced weapon, and it ends up covering the weaknesses of the BFG. Like, the BFG isn't all that great in close-quarter situations or against super heavies, while the Crucible excels in those situations. Taking out the two tyrants to unlock the gate in Double Archvile Hell is a lot easier when you can just slice off their ankles with a demonic lightsaber. And there's enough dangerous super heavies in the later parts of the game where you're actually going to get to use this thing, and in the master levels, to really make you feel like you're getting your mileage out of it where it counts. Unless you just use it to hack up some regular demons like some imps or something, in which case I don't know what to tell you. But this is another weapon that I don't use very often since I try to avoid the use of super weapons in general, but it does its job, and I'll put it at the very top of A tier. What definitely doesn't do its job is the Unmaker. This weapon was the subject of my most recent Doom Eternal video, so I'll try to be brief, and just direct you towards that video if you want my full thoughts on it. But basically take everything I said about the mobile turret being outclassed by the other sustained fire weapons, stick it about 5 levels in the game later, lock it behind difficult optional challenges throughout the game, and make it use the single most limited ammo resource in the game. Pair that with a bullet spread pattern that ends up harming you more than helping you unless you're an expert in demonic proctology, and you have, for all the effort it takes to get, and especially when compared to its Doom 64 counterpart, arguably the most worthless weapon in the entire game. Like, at least a shotgun base fire is good for those first couple of zombies, but it does still have its uses in small cramped arenas where the BFG won't cut it, and it is still a fairly powerful weapon. But for what it's supposed to be, it's just a disappointment. I'm sticking it below the chain gun's base fire in C tier, since while the chain gun is much weaker, it's also much more disposable and replenishable. And finally, last but certainly not least, is the Sentinel Hammer, the weapon that broke Tag 2. It's a very good thing that this weapon is only available in the second DLC, half of Horde mode with a heavy nerf on it, and 1 master level, because shit is borked. A massive AoE attack that kills every fodder enemy in a radius instantly, invalidating the existence of the chainsaw by dropping assloads of ammo, and stunning anything that manages to survive for so long that you're able to rack up insane damage on them in complete safety. And you get to upgrade it so they drop additional health and armor from ice bombs and flame belches. What could possibly be the cost of such an insanely powerful tool? 2 glory kills or weak point destructions. That's it. Not only is the hammer incredibly powerful, but it's downright spammable. In fact, there's instances in Tag 2 where they actually want you to spam it, like here in Reclaimed Earth. The hammer is so insanely powerful that it invalidates a lot of combat encounters, especially those with marauders. Spirits are just about the only thing capable of reducing its usability. And the hilarious thing is that they introduced an enemy in this very DLC that should have acted as the hammer's counter by making you think twice about spamming the hell out of a giant AoE blast, and they barely ever used it until the master level in Horde mode came out. It's not quite on the room clearing levels of the BFG, but it's so powerful in a DLC that's otherwise comparatively easy going by Doom Eternal standards that I have to stick it right below the BFG in SS tier. The fact that they had to go as balls to the wall as they did on the World Sphere Master level to make it actually balanced, and the fact that they had to directly nerf it in Horde mode says it all to me. It's just plain broken. And that's it. That's every single weapon and mod in Doom Eternal ranked. I'm decently pleased with all these placements. I'm sure some of you will disagree. I know there's a lot of shooters for mobile turret and microwave beam in my comments, and hey, maybe you just really fucking hate Heat Blast for some reason, but I tried to be as fair as possible. If this was a tier list about weapons I found the most fun to use, trust me when I say it would look a lot different. Full auto would be a lot higher, and the BFG wouldn't even really place on it since I just try not to use it. Super Shotgun would say the same though. God, I really don't know how they'll top themselves for the Dark Ages. Well, that's a ranking for another day. I hope you enjoyed this one. Until next time.